Hi, I'm Clark on Temptress. Today I'm going to talk about something that can sink your boat. It's really important to really think this through and decide if you want this feature or you don't want this feature. I'm talking about the stuffing box on your sailboat. A stuffing box is a hole this big in your boat that could fail and with devastating effects. Let's go into detail about stuffing boxes. If you have a sailboat and you have an inboard motor, which is most bigger boats, you have to get that energy from the motor out into the water, right? So you do that with the propeller shaft, but the propeller shaft has to go through your hull. That means there's a hole in your hull underwater, a big hole. We solved the problem of keeping the ocean out while still letting the propeller shaft spin by something that's called a stuffing box. Let me draw a stuffing box and I'll show you some pictures of one so you get an idea what it is. So the hull of your boat, the hole there's a pipe that they've fiberglassed right into the hole or welded or whatever's appropriate. With wood, there's, I think, a lot of caulk involved. But in short, there's this pipe. And then the shaft goes inside the pipe. So in my drawing here, there's the shaft, engine's up here somewhere, and the propeller, of course, is back here underwater. But we're going to zoom right in on this stuffing box. Well, these can't be the same diameter or they would just jam up and rip the pipe out of the hull or stall the engine. You know, even if there was a lot of drag, it would waste diesel fuel that you're trying to make spin the propeller and you're just making heat. And that's the final thing. If there's too much friction in this joint, you get heat. We'll get into that in a minute and deeper. So classically what is done is you do this thing called a stuffing box. And I will do the stuffing box here in black. So usually a piece of pipe, a piece of hose actually, this would go all the way around with very serious hose clamps on it. Is put in, and that piece of hose is thicker and heavier than any hose you've ever seen. I mean, the walls are like this. There's just lots and lots of threads in it, sometimes metal. It's a very serious piece of hose because it has a serious job. At the other end of it is the stuffing box itself, which is a structure with threading, and it's open on the inside. I guess I should draw it this way. And then there's a stuffing nut, and the nut wraps around into that space, and it can go down the same threading. The nut goes all the way around, of course. Try to draw this symmetrically. Now, when you assemble this, you do it out of the water often. I mean, yeah, you can do anything in the water, but life is so much easier and stress is so much lower if you're in the boatyard. So you're in the dry. You get the shaft centered into the pipe here. Well, before you put the shaft in, you put all this assembly in. You get the shaft in there. You get it aligned and everything. And then you take this nut off and you put in some packing, it's called. And flax is what is usually used. And it's this rope for all purposes. Got some wax in it, something like that. And of course, these go all the way around, but it would look like row after row after row of flax. 3 would be the minimum. You know, I've got one on my boat that has like 12 for the rudder shaft. Rudder shaft has the same thing, by the way. And then when you tighten down this stuffing nut, the nut pushes on this flex, and the flex gets pressed into the propeller and into the nut, and it becomes a tight seal. Tight enough so that water doesn't come rushing out, but not too tight to cause friction. So you run the boat for a little bit. If it gets hot, you have to loosen it. If it drips too much, you have to tighten it. When you first put it together, you're going to have to adjust it a lot, but eventually you don't adjust it much at all. And it kind of magically works. You want to kind of set it up so that the water is just dripping out drip-wise all the time. The bilge pump will take care of it, but you've got some water in your bilge all the time. Well, that's been good for, like, since engines. It's been good for a long time. It's used on pumps. It's a system that's good and reliable. And if it fails such that the fibers wear out and you just tighten the nut and then you're good again. So its failure mode is really not problematic. And if you got so much that you couldn't tighten anymore, you take the nut off. You can do this in the water. It'll leak pretty good, but not enough to be a problem. Put another row of fiber in, re-put the nut, lock it all down, and you're good for another 10 years. Yeah, but people don't want water in their bilge. And honestly, a lot of people that really don't think about it want what costs the most. We don't like to admit it, but a lot of times I see people making the decision, I can't think about this problem, that one's more expensive, it must be better. For whatever reason, a lot of people go with a dripless stuffing box. Let's take a look at what that looks like. I'll flip this over. Okay, so trying to get our picture back, we have the same hull, we have the same pipe, we have the same shaft, except now we're going to build a different structure. Instead of the old classic fiber-filled stuffing box, we're going to put a bellows clamped onto here. It always seems to be a bellows. I think it's because the stuffing box is actually really strong. And if you get out of alignment a little bit, it's kind of okay to push on it because everything there is just like metal, and the flex is, you can't really compress it too easy. What I'm about to talk about is like ceramic bearings and things, and I think they can't handle any side load at all. So there's a bellows, and then there's a bearing. All of this is on both sides. So clamps again, the bellows, this ceramic bearing. I think they're all ceramic. I think they might be carbon, but, and then on the other side of the bearing is, well, the other side of the bearing that clamps and seals right to the shaft. So you've got this bearing surface in this orientation. We've got this sealed right to the shaft. So this part spins, this part doesn't spin. The bellows has to keep the whole assembly from twisting, but it doesn't really limit it as much from moving this way. So if the shaft's out of alignment and it does that kind of thing, I guess it's okay. Great. Absolutely tremendous. They cost a bit, but keeps dry as can be. You can have, cobwebs in your bilge. But if they fail, you are so screwed. And they fail. They fail in a couple ways, but it all boils down to failing. I think maybe some sand might get into this bearing and seize it up, or the bearing just seizes up for other reasons, or maybe growth, or maybe something else. But when this bearing doesn't spin really nicely, this bellows just gets torn to pieces because the engine is now trying to twist it. And then the water just gushes in and comes into your boat. Now, if you live in the United States and a big trip for you is the intercoastal, and just 3 marinas down, there's a haul-out crane right there, and if you have desperation in your voice on the phone, they'll say, sure, come here, we'll haul you out right now. You're probably okay with one of these. Probably won't fail that often. You don't really use your boat that often. Yeah, maybe. But if you're going voyaging, this is a bad idea. You're going to end up using your motor way more than you think you're going to use your motor. But for whatever reason, some of these out cruising fail. And I've helped people in the parts of Panama that, like the shoreline, there's one place that's like a surf spot, probably where the Point Break guys would have gone, during the off season. It's supposed to be the greatest surf and everything, but until very recently, you couldn't get there without a mule. There is no haul out until you get all the way to Panama City, and then I believe there's one. And these guys, their bilge pumps are running and barely catching up. They're on the radio. Can I buy any bilge pumps from anybody? Just to have like 6 running bilge pumps. And I've gone over to one guy's and we wrapped it in towels and duct tape and hose clamp to the duct tape. And that would be fine, so he could be anchored and he could rest. And then he would have to take it all off. And just while he's motoring, he'd have to let it leak and then pack it back up. And there wasn't a lot of wind there, so he didn't have a boat that sailed in light wind very well. Anyway, that guy went through a lot of angst. And you don't want to go through that kind of angst because your boat could sink. One electrical failure and it's down. It would have like 2 hours and it would have been a problem. So I really recommend you don't go with these dripless if you're going out into harm's way. But let's say you really, really, really want a dry bilge. What if I told you Temptress's stuffing box does not leak in the least? Not in the least. And I don't have one of these. In fact, I set her up before these existed. I came up with a solution. I just took a flyer on something that looked like it made sense. And I actually bought it way back when. I think I was 28. And I'm not 28 anymore. I bought it, to tell you how long ago it is, I bought it from an ad in the classified section in the back of Cruising World magazine. Well, this is what it is. Oops. And I searched around and I found it. So I'll put a slide up in a minute. And that's the product. I don't have any affiliates with that. They don't sell it on Amazon. So you'll have to search it and find it yourself. But here's what you do. You take your packing out of your stuffing box. You put in 1 row of regular flux packing. Then you put in whatever number of rows is necessary of this product. And what it is basically a clay that's made out of Teflon, great big pieces of Teflon and little tiny pieces of Teflon and probably some binder as well. And you kind of form it like clay and wrap it around the shaft and shove it on down and put in however many rows you can, leaving room for 1 more row of the flex. It has a grease that's really, really slippery. You put that on everything and you put it all together. Now you don't tighten it until it drips just a little bit. Now you tighten it until it actually stops dripping. Now you're going to, again, run the boat. It's going to start leaking. You tighten it up a bit. Do that until it stops leaking. And check it. And how you check it is, run the engine at RPM, go down and put your hand on it. And it shouldn't be too warm, It should be low friction. And this stuff is. To tell you how great it was for me, my boat has a hydraulic transmission. And because it has a hydraulic transmission, well, the transmission is tough as nails, but there's no easy way to lock the shaft off. So while I'm sailing, that propeller is spinning all the time. So I've probably done, 30,000 ocean miles. It's been spinning the whole time. So, and it's been not dripping the whole time. So I got it all set up, left Seattle, sailed, came back to the United States, went out to the Bahamas, sailed, went to the Eastern Caribbean, sailed, came back, decided to put a new engine in the boat. Well, partly because the engine decided that it needed a new engine, but I disconnected the shaft from the engine, just let the shaft dangle. I changed out the engine myself on a mooring, and I was working at the time, it took probably 2 or 3 months before I hooked it back up. Well, all that time, the shaft was hanging on the stuffing box, and it kind of squished things there and opened things there. And then when I put it back together, it was leaking pretty good. So I said, I'll tighten it up. Well, I couldn't. It had been so long without having to be adjusted that the bronze had all corroded. Didn't matter because it was fine. So I ended up having to pull the shaft, put a new stuffing box on, find some more of this goop, put it in there. And to this day, it's sitting there not dripping. The first time lasted literally 25 years, and it would have gone another 25 likely, so the next one's going to outlive me. Anyway, that's my recommendation. If you're going to go anywhere that there's a concern about getting an immediate haul out, do not get a dripless stuffing box. Get a regular old-fashioned packing gland type stuffing box, but put this magical potion in it. It's worked for me. I'm sure it'll work for you. Now, what do you think about that? I'm sure some of you, because you're boaters, have that and will defend it to the death. That's what the comment section is for. Make your case, please do. Maybe you win the case. Maybe people will go down and read it and say, yep, that's what I want. Clark's full of it. But I think if I can solve the underlying problem, I can do it cheaper and I can do it more reliably. And let's say my packing idea was stupid. I mean, I've gone a lot of miles, but let's say it didn't work for you. All it would mean is out there in the middle of Panama, you pull that nut off, you dig out the old packing. You always have a bunch of this packing around, the old style, and shove it in there. While I'm talking about it, I have over the years seen things that I've never tried because I had a solution, right? I've seen, Teflon impregnated flax, which I think is a no-brainer. It's just better than wax, right? I've seen this carbon version where it's carbon fiber, but I don't know. You don't want it eating into your shaft. And I just don't know. Carbon's pretty hard stuff very often. You'd have to look around. But this stuff that I'm going to recommend is inexpensive, easy to work with, works reliably, and lasted virtually forever. What can you say more? Bye from Clark on Temptress.